The apartment door slammed so hard it shook the walls. Sophia stumbled backward, her shoulder hitting the doorframe as Derek's hand shot past her face, smashing into the mirror beside her head. Glass exploded across the floor in glittering fragments that caught the dying light from the window. She didn't scream. She'd learned not to scream months ago. "Where do you think you're going?" Derek's voice was low, dangerous. His face was flushed red, veins bulging at his temples. The smell of alcohol rolled off him in waves. "I asked you a question, Sophia." She pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, too far away. Her keys were in her purse by the door. Everything she needed to escape was just out of reach. "I was just going to get some air," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded, how weak. "Some air?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean you were running away from me? Again? After everything I've done for you?" He moved toward her, and Sophia's body locked up. This was the moment that always came before, the moment when his anger shifted from words to something worse. His hand was already raised. She ran. Not toward the door, that was blocked. Not toward the bedroom, that was a dead end. She ran toward the only escape she could reach. The balcony doors were already open, the curtains billowing in the evening breeze. She burst through them, her bare feet hitting cold concrete as the city noise rushed up to meet her. The balcony was small, barely enough room for the 2 chairs and tiny table she'd bought when she first moved in, back when she thought this apartment would be her fresh start, back when Derek had seemed kind, concerned, before she'd seen the monster hiding underneath. She gripped the railing, the metal icy against her palms. Below her, 8 stories down, the street was busy with evening traffic. People walking their dogs, couples heading to dinner, someone on a bicycle weaving between cars. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that someone above them was falling apart. "Sophia." Derek's voice came from the doorway behind her, softer now. That was always how it went. Rage, then the sickening sweetness. "Baby, come back inside. Let's talk about this." She didn't turn around. She couldn't. If she looked at him, she'd see that face he made, the one that looked almost like the man she'd fallen for 2 years ago, the man who didn't exist, the man who had never existed. "I'm not coming back inside," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Don't be stupid. It's cold out here. You'll get sick." "I don't care." She heard his footsteps, heard him coming closer. Her grip on the railing tightened until her knuckles went white. The bruise on her cheek throbbed where he'd hit her an hour ago, the split in her lips stinging in the cold air. She could feel the swelling around her left eye, could taste blood in her mouth. "Sophia, look at me." "No." His hand touched her shoulder and she flinched so violently she nearly lost her balance. She spun around, pressing her back against the railing, and finally looked at him. Derek's face was different now. The anger was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like concern, almost like love, but she'd learned to see through it. "You made me do this," he said quietly. "You know that, right? If you would just listen to me, if you would just stop trying to leave, none of this would happen." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd cried enough. She'd believed his apologies enough. She'd stayed too long already. "This is the last time," Derek said, reaching for her face. "I promise, baby. I'll get help. I'll be better. Just come inside and we'll forget this ever happened." His fingers touched her bruised cheek and she jerked away, the movement automatic, instinctive. His expression changed instantly. The mask dropped. The rage came flooding back. "Don't you dare pull away from me," he snarled. From somewhere to her left, she heard a door slide open. Then a voice, deep and calm, cut through the tension like a knife. "Is there a problem here?" Sophia's eyes flew to the balcony next to hers. A man stood there, one hand resting casually on his own railing, but his posture was anything but casual. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive-looking dark sweater and jeans. His hair was black, neatly styled, and his face was striking, the kind of face you'd see on a movie screen. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. dark, intense, and currently fixed on Derek with an expression that made her ex-boyfriend take an involuntary step back. "This is none of your business," Derek said, trying to sound tough but failing. There was something about the stranger that radiated danger, and even drunk and angry, Derek could sense it. The man's gaze shifted to Sophia, and she watched his expression change. His eyes moved over her face, taking in the bruises, the split lip, the swelling around her eye. When he looked back at Derek, his jaw was tight. "Who did this to you?" he asked Sophia, his voice still calm but with an edge now, something cold and deadly lurking beneath the surface. Before you find out what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any part of Sophia's journey. And drop a comment below telling us what you think Antonio should do. Now, back to the story. Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked from the stranger to Derek and back again. Derek was already moving toward the balcony door. "We're done here," Derek said. "Come inside, Sophia, now." "She doesn't look like she wants to go inside," the stranger said. "I said this isn't your business." Derek's voice was rising again. "Sophia, get inside before Before you what?" The stranger's voice was soft, almost gentle, but it carried a threat that made the hair on Sophia's arm stand up. "Before you give her more bruises to match the ones you already gave her?" Derek's face went red. "You don't know what you're talking about. She fell. Tell him, Sophia. Tell him you fell." Sophia looked at Derek, at the man who had terrorized her for months, who had convinced her she was worthless, that no one would believe her, that she deserved everything he did to her. Then she looked at the stranger, at this man who didn't know her but was standing up for her anyway. "I didn't fall," she whispered. The words hung in the air for a moment, then Derek lunged at her. She didn't see exactly what happened next. One second, Derek was coming toward her, his hand raised, his face twisted with rage. The next second, there was a blur of movement, the sound of something heavy hitting the wall between the two balconies, and Derek was on the ground. The stranger had somehow jumped from his balcony to hers. Impossible. The gap was too wide. But there he was, standing between her and Derek, one hand gripping Derek's shirt and pressing him against the wall. "Listen very carefully," the stranger said, his voice deadly calm. "You're going to leave now. You're going to walk out that door and you're never going to come back. You're never going to call her, text her, or even think about her again. Do you understand me?" Derek tried to struggle, but the stranger tightened his grip. "I asked if you understand." "Yes," Derek gasped. "Yes, I understand." The stranger released him, and Derek stumbled toward the door. He looked back at Sophia once, his expression a mixture of rage and humiliation. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." The stranger's voice was flat, final. Derek must have heard something in it that scared him more than his pride, because he turned and practically ran through the apartment. Moments later, Sophia heard the front door slam. Silence fell over the balcony. Sophia stood frozen, her back still pressed against the railing, her heart racing. The stranger turned to face her, and she found herself looking into those dark eyes again. "Are you okay?" he asked. The question was absurd. She almost laughed. Was she okay? She had bruises on her face, a split lip, a swollen eye. Her ex-boyfriend had just tried to attack her. A stranger had just thrown himself over a gap between balconies to protect her. Was she okay? "No," she said honestly. He nodded as if he'd expected that answer. "I'm Antonio. I just moved in next door. I've been here about a week." "Sophia," she managed to say. "Sophia," he said her name carefully, like he was committing it to memory. "How long has he been hurting you?" She swallowed hard. 6 months? Maybe 7. I've lost track. Antonio's jaw tightened. "He's going to come back." "I know," Sophia whispered. "He always does. He apologizes, he brings flowers, he says it'll never happen again, and then it happens again, and again, and again." "Not this time," Antonio's voice was firm. "Do you have somewhere safe you can go?" Sophia thought about her friends, the ones who had slowly disappeared over the past year as Derek had isolated her. She thought about her parents, who lived 3 states away and didn't even know what was happening. She thought about her sister, who had a baby and a husband and problems of her own. "No," she said quietly, "not really." Antonio studied her for a moment, then made a decision. "Then you'll stay with me." Sophia's eyes widened. "I can't. I don't even know you." "No, you don't," he agreed. "But you know him, and you know he's going to come back. When he does, do you want to be here alone?" She looked at Antonio, really looked at him. There was something in his eyes, something that told her he understood violence, that he'd seen it before, maybe even been part of it. But there was also something else, something protective and genuine. He wasn't looking at her with pity or judgment. He was looking at her like she mattered. "Just for tonight," she found herself saying. "Just until I figure out what to do." Antonio nodded. "Just for tonight," he agreed, though something in his tone suggested he knew it would be longer than that. 20 minutes later, Sophia was standing in Antonio's apartment with a hastily packed bag of her things. The apartment was bigger than hers, more luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city and furniture that looked like it cost more than her car. Everything was in shades of gray and black, modern and sleek and impersonal. "You can take the bedroom," Antonio said, gesturing toward a door at the end of the hall. "I'll sleep on the couch." "I can't take your bed," Sophia protested. "Yes, you can." His tone left no room for argument. "There's a lock on the door. Use it. The bathroom is connected to the bedroom. You'll have privacy." Sophia nodded numbly. She still couldn't quite believe this was happening. An hour ago, she'd been trapped in her apartment with Derek. Now she was standing in a stranger's home, safe for the first time in months. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Antonio's lips curved into a small, sad smile. "I know danger when I see it, Sophia, and you're not dangerous. You're scared." "But why help me?" He was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes distant. "Because someone should have helped me once, and they didn't. I won't make that mistake with someone else." Before Sophia could ask what he meant, Antonio turned away. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps, but tonight you're safe. I promise you that." Sophia watched him walk toward the kitchen, watched the way he moved with quiet confidence, like someone who was used to being in control. She wondered who Antonio really was, what his story was, why a man who lived in an apartment like this would jump across balconies to save someone he'd never met. But she was too exhausted to think about it anymore. She went into the bedroom, locked the door as he'd suggested, and collapsed on the bed. It was the softest bed she'd ever felt, the sheets smooth and cool against her skin. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in months, fell asleep without fear. The next morning, Sophia awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Derek, the balcony, Antonio. She sat up slowly, her body aching. Her face hurt, her ribs hurt, everything hurt. She stumbled into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. The bruises looked worse in the morning light, purple and yellow blooming across her cheek. Her eye was swollen almost shut. She looked like someone who'd been in a car accident. She looked like what she was, a victim. Sophia splashed water on her face, careful around the bruises, and changed into clean clothes from her bag. When she opened the bedroom door, she smelled coffee and something cooking. Antonio was in the kitchen, dressed in dark jeans and a gray t-shirt that showed off broad shoulders and muscular arms. He was making breakfast, moving around the kitchen with the ease of someone who knew what he was doing. When he heard her, he looked up. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," Sophia admitted. "Good. Sit down. Breakfast is almost ready." She sat at the island counter and watched him work. He made scrambled eggs, toast, bacon. Simple food, but he made it with care. When he set a plate in front of her, she realized she hadn't eaten properly in days. "Thank you," she said quietly. Antonio sat across from her with his own plate. They ate in silence for a few minutes. It should have been awkward eating breakfast with a stranger, but somehow it wasn't. It felt almost comfortable. "We need to talk about Derek," Antonio said finally. Sophia's appetite disappeared instantly. "I know." "He's going to come back," Antonio continued. "Men like him always do. He'll probably start with apologies and flowers. When that doesn't work, he'll get angry again. He might wait a day or two, but he'll be back." "I know," Sophia said again. "I've thought about leaving him so many times. I've even tried once before, but he always finds me. He always convinces me to come back. And when I do, it gets worse." "That ends now," Antonio said firmly. "You're not going back to him." "You can't protect me forever," Sophia pointed out. "You have your own life. I can't just hide here indefinitely." Antonio leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What do you know about me, Sophia?" "Nothing," I admitted, "just that you live next door and are apparently strong enough to jump between balconies." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I grew up in a world where violence was normal. My father ran certain businesses in this city, businesses that operated outside the law. When he died, I took over. I've spent my entire life around dangerous people, Sophia. I know how they think, I know how they operate, and I can promise you that Derek will not hurt you again." Sophia stared at him, processing what he'd just said. Businesses outside the law, dangerous people. She wasn't naive. She knew what he was telling her. "You're in the Mafia," she said slowly. He didn't confirm or deny it. "I'm telling you this because you need to understand that I can keep you safe. Derek is nothing. He's a bully who picks on someone smaller than him. He's not dangerous in the way you're afraid he is. He's dangerous because you're alone. But you're not alone anymore." If you're enjoying Sophia's story and want to see how this unfolds, make sure you like this video and share it with someone who loves powerful love stories. Comment below if you think Sophia should trust Antonio or if she's making a mistake. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Sophia should have been afraid. A normal person would have been afraid. But instead, she felt something else. Relief. For the first time in months, she felt like someone was on her side. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked. "You could get in trouble. Derek could go to the police, say you threatened him." "Let him," Antonio said with a shrug. "I have lawyers who handle things like that. Besides, Derek isn't stupid enough to go to the police. Men like him don't. They'd have to admit they were hurting you, and they'd rather die than admit that." He stood up and took their plates to the sink. "You can stay here as long as you need to," he said with his back to her. "A week, a month, longer. Whatever it takes for you to get back on your feet and figure out your next move. The only rule is that you don't go back to him. Promise me that." "I promise," Sophia said, and meant it. She was done with Derek. She was done being afraid. She was done being a victim. The next few days passed in a strange kind of limbo. Sophia stayed in Antonio's apartment, venturing out only to go to work at the small bookstore where she'd worked for 3 years. Antonio made sure she had everything she needed and gave her space when she needed it. But he was always there, a quiet, protective presence. One evening, about a week after she'd moved in, Sophia found Antonio sitting on his balcony. It was the same balcony he'd jumped from to save her, though now there was a proper ladder bridge connecting the two spaces. He'd installed it without asking, just in case she ever needed to get to his apartment quickly. "Can I join you?" she asked from the doorway. Antonio looked up and nodded. "Of course." She sat in the chair next to him. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling as evening fell. It was peaceful up here, away from everything. "I never thanked you properly for what you did, for what you're still doing." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." She turned to look at him. "You saved my life, Antonio." "Maybe literally." "Derek was getting worse. I think if you hadn't been there that night, something terrible might have happened." Antonio's jaw tightened. "I should have noticed sooner. I heard things through the walls sometimes, shouting, crying. I should have done something earlier." "You did enough," Sophia said firmly. "You did more than anyone else ever did." They sat in companionable silence for a while. Sophia found herself studying Antonio's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way the fading light caught in his dark hair. He was handsome in a dangerous way, the kind of handsome that should have scared her, but didn't. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "You said someone should have helped you once. What did you mean?" Antonio was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, his voice low. "My mother was like you. Not exactly the same, but similar. My father was a violent man. He ran his empire with an iron fist, and he ran his home the same way. My mother never fought back. She just endured it, year after year." "Antonio, I'm so sorry." He shook his head. "I was 10 years old when I finally understood what was happening. Old enough to know it was wrong, but not old enough to stop it. I tried once, got between them during an argument. My father broke my arm and locked me in the basement for 3 days." Sophia's hand went to her mouth. "My mother died when I was 15. The official story was that she fell down the stairs, but I knew the truth. Everyone in our circle knew the truth. And no one did anything. No one helped her. No one stopped him." "That's why you helped me," Sophia said softly. "You're giving me the help she never got." "Yes." Antonio looked at her, and there was pain in his eyes, old pain that had never fully healed. "I couldn't save her, but I can save you." Without thinking, Sophia reached out and took his hand. Antonio looked down at their joined hands, surprised. Then his fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. "You're not responsible for what happened to your mother," Sophia said. "You were a child. You couldn't have stopped him." "Maybe not then," Antonio said, "but I'm not a child anymore. I have power now, resources, and I'll use everything I have to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to you." They sat there holding hands as the sun set completely, the city lights coming alive around them. Sophia felt something shift inside her, something warm and terrifying. She was starting to care about Antonio, starting to trust him in ways she hadn't trusted anyone in years. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid, but it was also real. 2 weeks passed. Sophia fell into a routine at Antonio's apartment. She went to work, came home, made dinner with Antonio. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her stories about growing up in his father's shadow, about the first time he had to make a hard decision, about the burden of leadership. She told him about her dreams of going back to school, about the novel she'd been writing in secret, about her family and the life she had left behind when she met Derek. Derek continued his campaign of harassment, but it was getting weaker. The calls and texts came less frequently. He'd shown up at the bookstore once, but Antonio's security had escorted him out before he could even reach the front door. Sophia had watched through the window, watched Derek rage and threaten, and felt nothing. No fear, no guilt, no urge to go to him and make it better. She was healing, slowly but surely. But she was also falling for Antonio, which was its own kind of danger. One night, Sophia woke up screaming. She'd been having a nightmare, one where Derek had found her, and Antonio wasn't there to stop him. She sat up in bed, gasping, her heart racing. There was a knock on the bedroom door. "Sophia, are you okay?" Antonio's voice, concerned. She stumbled to the door and opened it. He was standing there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair mussed from sleep, his eyes worried. "I had a nightmare," she whispered. "About him?" She nodded. "He had me. You couldn't stop him. No one could." Antonio stepped into the room without asking permission. "Sophia, look at me." She looked up at him. Even in the dim light from the hallway, she could see the intensity in his eyes. "He will never touch you again," Antonio said firmly. "I promise you that. I will always be here to stop him. Always." "You can't promise that," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "You can't be with me every second of every day. Eventually, he'll find a way." "Then I'll make sure he can't. Permanently." There was something in his tone, something dark and final, that made Sophia realize he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant it. He would kill Derek if that's what it took to keep her safe. "No," Sophia said quickly. "Antonio, no. You can't do that. I won't let you ruin your life for me." "It wouldn't ruin my life. he said simply. "I've done worse for less important reasons." Sophia stared at him. She should have been horrified. She should have been afraid. But instead, she felt something else entirely. She felt protected, cherished, like she mattered to someone in a way she hadn't in years. "I don't want you to do that, but I need you to know that it means something to me that you would, that you care enough to even think about it." Antonio's expression softened. "I matter to you, Sophia, more than you probably should." "What does that mean?" He hesitated, then said, "It means I care about you in ways I shouldn't. You came here because you needed help, not because you wanted to get involved with someone like me. I'm trying to respect that." Sophia's heart was pounding. "What if I do want to get involved with someone like you?" "Then you'd be making a mistake," Antonio said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "I'm not a good man, Sophia. I've done things I'm not proud of. I live in a world that's violent and dangerous. You deserve better than that." "Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I just want you." The words hung in the air between them. Antonio looked at her like he was fighting an internal battle, wanting to reach for her but holding himself back. "You're vulnerable right now," he said carefully. "You're in a place where it's easy to confuse gratitude with something else. I don't want to take advantage of that." "You're not taking advantage," Sophia insisted. "I know the difference between gratitude and this. I'm not confused. I'm scared, yes, I'm still healing, but I know what I feel." Antonio closed his eyes briefly, like he was trying to find strength. When he opened them again, there was such raw emotion there that Sophia's breath caught. "I've been alone my whole life. Even when I was surrounded by people, I was alone. I learned not to let anyone close. It's safer that way, for them and for me. But you, Sophia, you make me want things I thought I'd given up on." "Like what?" "Like someone to come home to, like someone who sees me as more than just a dangerous man with power, like someone who might actually care if something happened to me." Sophia stepped closer to him. "I do care. I care so much it terrifies me. I just got out of something horrible, something that almost destroyed me. I should be running away from any kind of relationship, but I can't seem to run away from you." Antonio reached up and gently touched her face, his fingers careful around the fading bruises. "I don't want to hurt you, ever, but I'm afraid I will. It's what people like me do." "You're not Derek," Sophia said firmly. "You're nothing like him. You've had 1,000 opportunities to hurt me, to take advantage of me, to use me, and you haven't. You've been nothing but kind and patient and protective. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." Want to know what happens next between Sophia and Antonio? Smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling us if you think they belong together or if this is moving too fast. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because this story is about to get even more intense. Antonio's resolve finally broke. He leaned down and kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Sophia's hands came up to his chest, feeling his heart racing under her palms. The kiss deepened, and for the first time in months, Sophia felt something other than fear. She felt desire. She felt hope. When they finally pulled apart, Antonio rested his forehead against hers. "We should take this slow," he murmured. "Okay," Sophia agreed, even though every part of her wanted to pull him back. "Can you sleep now?" She nodded. "I think so." But as Antonio started to leave, Sophia caught his hand. "Stay," she said. "Please, just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone." Antonio looked uncertain, but he nodded. He sat in the chair by the window while Sophia got back into bed. He stayed there, watching over her until her breathing evened out and she fell into peaceful sleep. And for the first time since his mother died, Antonio allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could have something good in his life. The next few weeks were the happiest Sophia had been in years. She and Antonio continued to take things slow, but the connection between them grew stronger every day. They talked for hours, shared meals, watched movies curled up on the couch. Antonio taught her self-defense moves, simple things that made her feel more confident. Sophia helped him pick out furniture to make his apartment feel more like a home. Derek had gone quiet. Too quiet. It made Sophia nervous, but Antonio's security team assured them that Derek had left the city, gone to stay with family in another state. It seemed like it was finally over. One evening, Sophia was at the bookstore when her coworker came up to her. "There's a guy asking for you," she said. "Says he's your brother?" Sophia frowned. "I don't have a brother." Her coworker's expression changed. "Oh, well, he's at the front desk. Tall guy, brown hair, looks pretty agitated." Derek. Sophia's blood ran cold. She immediately pulled out her phone and texted Antonio. He responded within seconds. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." But before Sophia could do anything else, Derek appeared around the corner. He looked terrible, his clothes wrinkled, his face haggard, his eyes wild. "Derek," he said, his voice cracking, "finally, I need to talk to you." "Get out," Sophia said, surprised by how steady her voice was. "You're not supposed to be here." "I just want to talk. Please, Sophia. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "No. Leave or I'm calling the police." Derek's expression darkened. "You're really going to choose him over me? That criminal? Do you know who he is, Sophia? Do you know what he does?" "I know exactly who he is, and he's been more honest with me than you ever were." "Honest?" Derek laughed bitterly. "Sophia, he's playing you. Men like him don't care about people like you. You're a toy to him, a distraction. When he gets bored, he'll throw you away." "That's what you would do," Sophia said quietly. "That's not what he does. Now get out before I call security." Derek took a step toward her and Sophia tensed, but then Antonio's voice cut through the air like a blade. "She told you to leave." Everyone in the bookstore turned. Antonio stood at the entrance, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. He looked calm, almost casual, but there was something in his posture that radiated danger. Derek paled. "This is between me and Sophia." "No," Antonio said, walking forward slowly. "It's not. You lost any right to talk to her the first time you laid a hand on her. Now you have 2 choices. You can leave on your own, or my associates here will help you leave. Your choice." Derek looked at the 2 men, then at Antonio, then at Sophia. For a moment she thought he might actually try to fight, but then his shoulders slumped. "You'll regret this, Sophia," Derek said quietly. "When he shows his true colors, don't come crying to me." "I won't, because I'm never coming back to you, ever. Move on, Derek. Find someone else to terrorize. I'm done." Derek stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out. The 2 men followed him, making sure he actually left. Antonio crossed the bookstore to Sophia's side. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Sophia nodded, then surprised herself by laughing. "I stood up to him. I actually stood up to him." Antonio smiled, real and warm. "You did. I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," Antonio said. "You had that strength in you all along. You just needed to find it again." That night, after Sophia had finished her shift, Antonio took her somewhere unexpected. They drove out of the city to a small house on a hill overlooking the water. It was quiet, peaceful, beautiful. "What is this place?" Sophia asked as they got out of the car. "It was my mother's," Antonio said. "My father bought it for her years ago, back when he was still trying to pretend he loved her. She was the only one who ever came here. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to sell it. I come here sometimes when I need to think." They walked down to the water's edge. The sun was setting and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sophia could hear the gentle lap of waves against the shore, feel the salt air on her face. "This is beautiful," she breathed. "I wanted to show it to you," Antonio said. "I've never brought anyone here before, but I wanted you to see it." Sophia turned to look at him. "Why?" Antonio took her hands in his. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Sophia. I've been fighting it, trying to convince myself it's too soon, that you're not ready, that I'm not good enough for you. But I can't fight it anymore. I love you." Sophia's heart felt like it might burst. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have for weeks. I was just too scared to say it." Antonio pulled her close and kissed her as the sun set behind them. It was perfect, this moment, this place, this man. Sophia had been so broken just weeks ago, so convinced that love only meant pain. But Antonio had shown her something different. He'd shown her that love could also mean safety, respect, healing. When they finally pulled apart, Antonio said, "I have something I want to ask you." "What is it?" "Move in with me, not as someone who's hiding from her ex, as someone who wants to build a life with me. I know it's fast, and I know you might need more time, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this, about us." Sophia smiled. "I'm already living with you, Antonio." "You're staying with me," he corrected. "That's different. I want you to make it your home. I want your books on my shelves, your clothes in my closet, your pictures on my walls. I want to come home to you every night." "Yes," Sophia said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll move in with you. Really move in." Antonio's smile was radiant. He picked her up and spun her around, and Sophia laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. 3 months later, Sophia stood on the same balcony where everything had changed. But this time, she wasn't running from anything. She was standing there by choice, watching the city lights twinkle below, feeling the cool evening breeze on her face. Antonio's arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "About how different my life is now," Sophia said. "About how I almost gave up that night, how close I came to believing Derek when he said I was worthless, that no one would ever love me." "You're not worthless," Antonia said firmly. "You never were. He just tried to make you believe that so you'd stay." "I know that now," Sophia said. "Because of you. You showed me what real love looks like, what respect looks like, what partnership looks like." Antonio turned her around to face him. "You saved me too, you know? I was so closed off before you came into my life, so convinced that I was destined to be alone, that I didn't deserve anything good. But you changed that." "We saved each other," Sophia said softly. "Yes," Antonio agreed. "We did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sophia's breath caught. "I know we haven't been together that long," Antonio said, "and I know you're still healing from everything you went through. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to protect you, support you, love you for as long as you'll let me." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "Sophia, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Sophia's face. But they were happy tears this time. She'd cried so many tears of pain and fear over the past year. These were different. These were tears of joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Antonio slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, deep and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. "I love you," Sophia said. "I love you too. Always." They stood on that balcony, the place where their story had begun, and looked out at the city spread before them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Sophia wasn't afraid of it. She had Antonio by her side, and together they could face anything. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony at the house by the water, the one that had belonged to Antonio's mother. It felt right, getting married there, honoring the woman who had suffered in silence, but whose memory had helped save Sophia's life. Sophia wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Antonio wore a dark suit and looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Their wedding was attended by a handful of close friends and family, people who had supported them both through everything. As they exchanged vows, Sophia thought about how far she'd come. She'd been broken, terrified, convinced that she would never escape Derek's control. But she had escaped. She'd found her strength again, and she'd found something even better, something she'd stopped believing existed. She'd found real love. Antonio's vows were simple but powerful. I promise to protect you, not because you need protecting, but because you deserve to feel safe. I promise to support your dreams, even the ones that scare you. I promise to love you, even on the days when you find it hard to love yourself. And I promise to never, ever make you feel small or worthless or afraid. You are my equal, my partner, my everything. Sophia's vows were equally heartfelt. You saw me at my lowest point, when I was beaten down and broken, and you didn't look away. You showed me what real strength looks like, not the kind that comes from violence or control, but the kind that comes from compassion and protection and choosing to do the right thing even when it's hard. You gave me back my life, Antonio. Now, I want to spend that life with you. When they kissed as husband and wife, everyone cheered. It was a perfect moment, a perfect day, the beginning of a perfect life together. As for Derek, he never came back. Antonio's people had made it very clear that any attempt to contact Sophia would have severe consequences. Derek had apparently taken the hint and moved across the country. Sophia heard through mutual friends that he was in therapy, trying to deal with his anger issues. She hoped he would get better, not for her sake, but for the sake of whoever he might meet next. But mostly, she didn't think about Derek at all anymore. Her life was full of better things now. Better people, better love. A year after their wedding, Sophia published her first novel. It was a story about a woman who escaped an abusive relationship and found healing and love with someone unexpected. It was fiction, but it was also her truth, woven through every page. The book became a bestseller, and Sophia received thousands of messages from women who had been through similar experiences, women who saw themselves in her story. Antonio was proud of her, always encouraging her to write more, to share her voice with the world. He'd even started using some of his resources to fund domestic violence shelters and support groups. It was his way of honoring his mother's memory and helping other women who were trapped the way she had been. Together, they were making a difference. Together, they were healing old wounds and creating something beautiful from pain. 2 years after they met, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a surprise, but a happy one. Antonio was overjoyed, though Sophia could see the fear in his eyes too. Fear that he would be like his father, fear that he wouldn't know how to be a good parent. "You're nothing like him," Sophia assured him. "You're kind, patient, and loving. You're going to be an amazing father." "How do you know?" Antonio asked. "Because I know you," Sophia said simply, "and I know that you would never, ever hurt someone you love. You prove that to me every day." When their daughter was born, Antonio cried. He held her so carefully, like she was made of glass, and promised her that he would always protect her, always love her, always be the father he'd wished his father had been. They named her Maria after Antonio's mother. It felt right giving her that name, honoring the woman who had suffered so that her son could learn what not to do. Before we wrap up this incredible journey, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload. Drop a like on this video if Sophia and Antonio's story touched your heart, and comment below telling us what you loved most about their journey. Share this with someone who needs to hear that there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. Years passed. Maria grew into a bright, confident little girl who knew she was loved unconditionally. Sophia continued to write, producing book after book, each one touching more lives. Antonio slowly began to step back from his more dangerous business dealings, focusing instead on legitimate enterprises and his charity work. Together, they were making a difference. Together, they were healing old wounds and creating something beautiful from pain. With life filled with so much new, happy energy, Sophia knew she was ready for another huge adventure. One evening, when Maria was 5 years old, Sophia found herself back on the balcony where it had all begun. Antonio joined her, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Do you remember the first time we talked?" Sophia asked. "How could I forget?" Antonio said. "You were standing here, broken and scared, and I knew I had to help you. I didn't know then that you would change my life completely." "We changed each other's lives," Sophia corrected. That night, we both needed saving, and somehow we saved each other. Antonio wrapped his arm around her. Do you ever regret it, choosing to trust me? Never, Sophia said without hesitation. Trusting you was the best decision I ever made. You gave me back my life. You gave me love. You gave me a family. How could I ever regret that? Good, Antonio said, kissing the top of her head, because I plan on keeping you for the rest of my life. Promise? Promise. They stood there together, watching the city lights below, listening to the sound of Maria's laughter from inside the apartment where she was playing with her toys. Their life was full of love and hope and second chances. It was everything Sophia had stopped believing she could have. And it all started here, on this balcony, with a simple question. Who did this to you? That question had changed everything. It had been the beginning of Sophia's healing, the start of Antonio's redemption, the foundation of a love that had transformed them both. Sophia had learned that she was strong enough to leave. Antonio had learned that he was worthy of love. Together, they had learned that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest futures. She ran to the balcony, fleeing her abusive ex. The Mafia Boss saw the bruises on her face and asked who did this to her. And from that moment on, neither of them were ever alone again. Thanks for watching this emotional journey with us. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that they deserve better, that there's hope, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Sophia and Antonio's journey, and let us know what stories you'd like to see next. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and you deserve to be loved with respect and kindness. Until next time.